Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the CoStar, our official newspaper, and the Asbury Park Press, and notice of this meeting was posted on the borough's website and on the bulletin board. Take roll call. Councilwoman Donovan? Here. Councilwoman Kinney? Here. Councilman de Blasio?
Here.
Councilman Maroney?
Here.
Mayor Lopez-Vesco?
Here. Please stand for the allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence for our troops, their families, first responders, and tonight also Peter Young, who was a member of our water rescue, and David Graham, a Belmar firefighter. Thank you. Okay, on the workshop tonight we have an engineering update. Before we do that, are there any other items for discussion and workshop?
We received something from the Inlet Terrace Board of Trustees. It was an email to all of us about the 102, 106 in the Terrace, that area there, the stop sign, but they're looking to get it, once it gets paid, painted stop. I don't know if that's something we can redo or if that's something that we need approval for or something.
Yeah, I saw that and I wasn't sure if it was going to be part of the repaving of Fifth Avenue, but we can check with our borough engineer and see if we can manage to do that. Is that at the 4th Avenue where we had the stop sign put?
Yeah, the new stop sign.
I didn't know if it was Fifth Avenue, Inlet Terrace coming on to Fifth. I thought that's where it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's part. I think it's part of the construction. When you're heading towards Main Street, when you come up in the terrace, there's supposed to be a stop,
Right.
and most people glide through it. And I'm not sure if the construction ripped up part of the road there anyway. But maybe you could check and see if they can do a stop.
Mr. Mayor, we'll certainly investigate.
Yeah.
If the stop sign was removed, we'll make sure it's replaced immediately. If the request is to evaluate it for an additional stop, we'd be happy to do that, or if it's an enforcement issue, we can always work with PD.
No, I think the stop sign is still there. I think we just want to have it painted on the pavement.
The white line
Yeah.
and the stop.
The stop bar.
Yeah,
It's
stop
pretty
bar.
common to see some kind of merging right onto.
I think it was there. It's probably gotten worn out or whatever.
Is that supposed to be paved soon? Or weren't we spring this year to do paving? Is that part of the update?
That's part of the update,
Okay,
but to answer your question, yes, they're out there working on concrete now. Once the concrete's complete, they'll roll into milling and paving.
Yeah, they actually got up to my house today with partial concrete, and then they're moving towards Main Street.
The workshop, we have a couple of the ordinances, would be questions on those now.
Do you want to do them now or after
We
we
do
do
that
them?
in engineering.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, let's hear from our borough engineer. If you're ready.
Jim, you want us down there?
Yeah, I was going to ask if I could use the screen behind you.
Sure.
If that's possible, and I was also going to hand out an abbreviated engineer's report. So maybe I can,
Thank you, Jim.
in case you can see, you can maybe more easily follow along.
Great, thank you.
And I apologize for my informal attire, but apparently I forgot my sport coat at home. So, So this evening, first I want to say thank you for the opportunity to appear before the mayor and council. What I've done is I've prepared an abbreviated or a much shorter version of our engineer's report so that I could move forward with a presentation. I've broken our report down into grant applications, And then as we move forward through the report, I'll talk about capital projects, projects that were previously completed, projects that are under construction, and projects that are planned. So the map that's up on the screen, as you see now, is a map that we prepared after we completed an assessment of the roads based on the conditions that they were in 2023. And it was not only a road assessment, but it was also an assessment of your water and sewer and drainage facilities. So what we did was we took this map, the road condition map, and I just overlaid all of the information of the projects that we have going on. And it's a little difficult to see based on the scale, and there's a lot going on. So when you look at this map and you see crosshatching colors and call-outs, it's not as easy as I hoped it would be for you to see on the screen. What I did want to point out, though, is on the map, and I have smaller copies that I can distribute, is that I've identified the projects on the lower left-hand side, along with the grant funding that was received for these projects. The project costs, where we have that information, in certain cases it has not been planned out, and then to be determined, where I don't have exact numbers, and then if there's a match. So since it's not really that visible, I brought smaller copies of the map that I think you can be able to read. So what I'll do is I'll also distribute that. So this is the same map that's on the screen. And I can always provide bigger copies. Hopefully this makes it a little more easy for you to follow. I'd also like to preface my report by saying we've worked very hard with Finance and Public Works to help identify the projects, identify the priorities, and identify the funding. So thank you for all of your assistance on these projects. So on the 8.5 by 11 that I've handed out, the first grant that we're tracking, which was awarded, was, and this is in the most recent descending order, so FY 2026 was the municipal aid grant program, and that was awarded in the amount of $253,000 and change. That project included resurfacing of Fifth Avenue from C Street to Ocean Avenue. So that would be a continuation of the Fifth Avenue project for where it terminates at C Street, and it would get us to Ocean Avenue. As you can see, it's a purple color road, generally indicating that it's not in the best of shape. Tan is the worst color. Purple is the next to worse. It's still in bad shape. But however, the sewer, I believe, is not in horrible shape in that area, and there's less water services that need to be tackled on that section. So when the borough approaches or tries to complete that project, we'll be able to take a look at all of the infrastructure as we've done on Fifth Avenue from Main Street to C Street. On Fifth Avenue from Main Street to C Street, all of those improvements that are completed all were done in addition to what you see on the road, but the water and the sewer and any drainage improvements were completed. I apologize to all of the residents on Fifth Avenue because I know it's been a long haul because the weather closed us out. But unfortunately, when the weather came in and then we had this really bad snow, we weren't able to get to the paving part of the project. However, we're nearing the end on that. So the next grant application is the 2025 DOT Municipal Aid Road Grant, which is from Ocean Avenue down 6th Avenue along South Lake and terminates at, actually comes over to a little bit of 7th. That grant was awarded in 2020 for the 2025 cycle. That project should be funded or considered to be funded in this year because it has a requirement that the contract to a contractor be awarded by November of 2026, absent any request for an extension. So it's not been funded. Just like the 2026 project has not been funded, the 2025 project has not been funded. So we need to plan for those, but we did receive a grant in the amount of $299,000 and change for that project. The next item is the Complete Streets Technical Assistance Program. That was a program that was offered free to the borough to evaluate what initially was, how can we improve 8th Avenue from Ocean Avenue all the way down to Main Street. Councilwoman Donovan, you were at one of those meetings where we walked the streets and we met with the folks from Complete Streets. They made recommendations. All that work was done at no cost to the borough, which resulted in a report about how we can improve the walkability, rideability, and function of 8th Avenue. So that culminated in one of the other grants that's on our list, which is the Transportation Set-Aside Grant, which the state provided to the borough in the amount of $1,131,000. So that is another project that for 8th Avenue that needs to be reviewed for future funding, but the grant funding is a reimbursement program. So what that means is that you actually have to borrow the money to get the money back. So again, we'll have to work with finance and public works on how that project can proceed. The next was the Monmouth County Open Space Grant application, which was a walking trail around Silver Lake. That was funded by Monmouth County Open Space in the amount of $203,000 and change. But that also included some amenities that would be associated with benches or trash rack replacement and things of that nature. So that is another project that is a reimbursement project which would need to be funded. And my recommendation for that project is that we plan for it in 2020, late 26 or 27, because there's another project underway at the lake which would which is an Army Corps funded project, which is not listed in the grant. I apologize for that, but we'll touch base on the Silver Lake project, which is funded through partially funded through the Army Corps in a few minutes. Or I can talk about that now. So, Army Corps provided the borough with a grant in the amount of I believe it's $230,000 with a $230,000 match to investigate the overall health and function of Silver Lake. That work is ongoing. We're actually in the process of wrapping up our survey of the lake, which not only includes a bathymetric survey of the lake, but it's checking the depth and contours of the lake, but also evaluating the number and size of the outfalls and the drainage in catchment basin coming into the lake, as well as the outfall that used to go out into the ocean from 6th Avenue. So we're hopeful that we'll have that information for the lake over into the Army Corps in the next 30 days, where then they can take that information and build their plan, if you will, on what the borough should consider for improvements to Silver Lake. And again, that project is funded 50% match, but $230,000 comes from Army Corps. The Boardwalk Preservation Grant, which initially included many different phases, boardwalk repair, bathrooms at different locations, but in the end, what the Historic Preservation Trust funded was the bathroom at 16th Avenue, which is currently under construction. That grant was in the amount of $1,504,000 and change. The match on that grant was $75,000. So that's a pretty good ratio when you think about you got 1.5 million and the borough's match was only 1.7. So we'll touch base on the status of that project in a few minutes when we talk about actual projects. And then I also wanted to just touch base on the fact that Councilwoman Donovan, I believe you participated in some regional meetings with the New Jersey Resiliency Project, and Monmouth County was the lead. Belmar was one of the 5 towns that participated in a project for resiliency around the Shark River, which ultimately could result in dredging of the Shark River and some living shoreline projects. This is a stepping stone to get more grant funding from the state for projects within the Shark River Basin. And in the event that the state were to move forward with some sort of dredging project, the thought is that they can take that material and reuse it in the living shoreline project. So that's the resiliency part. And at that time, Belmar could benefit from potentially piggybacking on that project and getting dredging done at your marina at a much reduced cost because of that potential of reusing the dredge material. So that's the Resilient New Jersey grant project. Littoral Society is also involved in that project, so it's going to be an interesting project. I've also been involved with the Littoral Society with another town over in Neptune, where they're doing living shoreline projects. So I think it's a good team. I think there's a lot of opportunity for success there. I wanted to touch base on the projects that have been completed since 2023. You can see on our list that we have the Belmar Plaza ADA improvements. So at Belmar Plaza, Monmouth County CDBG provided a grant to the borough, and we completed the ADA improvements of ramps and sidewalk within the borough in that plaza. That project is complete and reimbursed. We also did a pilot in 2023. We did a piling replacement project in the marina. We were hopeful that the project across the way, that contractor could use his barge to come over and drive piles. He never bid on the project. So while we were hoping we can get an economy of scales, he had represented he would bid on the project. Bids came in too high, so that project wasn't awarded. However, there were subsequent projects in the marina that I'll touch on in a few minutes. In 2023, there was a transportation trust fund project for Inlet Drive. That was started prior to 23, but it was finished out paving in 2023, and that also included water and sewer improvements. Lake Como walking trail, which was completed on the borough side. That was done in 2023. And similarly, I touched on the project around Silver Lake. The thought was it would be a similar type of pavement, which would be a porous pavement, which can help with reducing runoff and encouraging groundwater recharge, thereby improving water quality of the lake. During 2023, we were able to modify the beach and dune maintenance permit. The permit that was issued in 2022 required that all of your bathroom trailers be removed and not be brought back to the beach, along with all of your beach boxes. Through the help with administration, public works, the council, we were able to get the permit modified so that the trailers at 8th, 11th, and 19th could stay. 16th was being replaced with a bathroom. However, they drew a hard line with the trailer at 3rd Avenue because there was no historic evidence that a bathroom ever existed on the beach before. So I know that remains a bone of contention, if you will, for that area. So obviously we're always looking at options on what can be done there. But a bathroom trailer on the beach, they've given us a hard no on that. Fuel dock repairs. So in 2023, we had a situation where the concrete slab of the fuel dock began to collapse. So we had to do emergency repairs on that fuel dock, basically put divers underneath it and come up with a way to support the flotation of the dock, because the dock itself lost its flotation and was collapsing. And the big concern was that if parts of it were to collapse to a point, we could wind up having fuel go into the river, which would then be a bigger mess. So we were able to support the fuel dock on a temporary basis in 2023. In 2024, it was a much quieter year in terms of completed projects, but many of the projects were planned and moved into the design phase in 2024. However, in 2024, we did complete the Taylor Avenue bathroom conversion, so we added bathrooms to Taylor Avenue, and that was a project in itself. And then in addition to that, at Taylor, the Taylor Avenue Pavilion, we replaced the doors that face the ocean front that had been a leaking issue for a lot of years. Hopefully they're not leaking, right, Phil? They hear it. Electrical upgrades to J, K, and L docks. That was started in 23 and finished out in 24. Silver Lake gazebo reconstruction. I don't know if any of you recall, we had some of those really strong, I don't know if you call them straight line winds or dereches, but it damaged the gazebo to a point where it needed to be rebuilt. That was completed in 2024. And then the piano plaza, getting the piano in and on the platform, had to build a new platform, in Piano Plaza that took place in 2024. In 2025, as I had said, during 24, we were designing and permitting a lot of the projects, and the fuel dock was replaced in 2025. That was a pretty big undertaking. The docks were docks that were selected, came from Florida. There was I think it was like a 3 or 4 month lead time. We were able to get the docks online prior to summer, but we didn't meet them. I think it was Memorial Day we were shooting for. There were some glitches, but eventually we got it open and it was up and running. I think we've worked through all the glitches, right, Marshall? If not, let me know. And Bill and I have been working on some final punch list items on the fuel dock. So moving forward, awarded and under construction. 5th Avenue, as we talked about, from Main Street to C Street, that is slated to be finished this spring. 14th Avenue, which goes from Ocean to B, that is awarded to the same contractor that's working on 5th Avenue. And they're either gonna start this spring, but they may wanna try and, we don't want them building this during the spring, unless the mayor and council decide that that's acceptable, because of the impacts to your residents. So that may or may not happen this spring, but the contract is awarded and we're locked into the pricing for that project. And with that, we're also gonna be replacing lead service lines. 8th Avenue sewer lining project. Over the course of the last 2 years, I've had several conversations with folks over at SMRSA, Southern Monmouth Regional Sewage Authority. The executive director has made very clear that when it rains, our effluent from our pump station at 8th Avenue swells dramatically, demonstrating that we have a problem with I&I, and that eventually costs us extra money because now we're paying to dispose of rainwater as opposed to the regular sewer flow. So we have a project awarded. It's under construction to line the sewer main from about mid-block, between Main and E, all the way out to Ocean Avenue where it goes into the pump station. That pipe is significantly old. Joints are separated, and if you drive down the road, you can see that there's divots in the center line where we're losing dirt into the pipe. So that's evidence that it definitely is leaking. So that project is slated, the actual sewer lining is slated to happen, I think, the week of April 6th. So they're gonna show up. They've already done their cleaning, they're videoing, and they're gonna be lining those segments of pipe first week in April.
Jim, do they open up the street at all for that?
No. This is all done through manholes. So they'll bypass pump during the process, and they basically pull the sleeve through the pipe, and they have a process by which they'll expand it and harvest.
Did they smoke the pipe to see what, that's a way to determine what kind of, how many ejector pumps are tied into the line, those get into someone's house?
Yeah.
Did they do that just so we could eliminate, rainwater a lot of times is coming from sump pumps?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, we did not include that in our project to check for illicit connections, but that's certainly something that we can do as a supplemental project, particularly in areas where we think we have a problem. Now, when we were doing the bypass pumping for 8th Avenue, my inspector told me that he thinks that we have an issue not on 8th, but somewhere off of either Main or E, where there was flow when there should not have been flow. So there may be an illicit connection that we need to track down, which would contribute to our issues of having to dispose of, in that case, it would be groundwater instead of rainwater. So little by little, I think we need to tackle our I&I problem, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes as a part of the bigger plan of how we can work together to improve. So the other project under construction, Monmouth County Open Space Grant funded the Densey Park project. So the basketball courts are under reconstruction now. That project was funded with 2 local recreation improvement grants as well as a Monmouth County Open Space grant. And it's going to include a resurfacing of the 3 courts. The basketball goals are all going to be replaced. There'll be a certain number of bleachers that are replaced, and the lights are going to be replaced through a state contract. They're not gonna replace the poles, they're gonna just replace the lights with energy efficient LED lighting, that matches with the current poles, because they're all a Musco product. So that project is underway. I would say that they'll be done within 6 weeks. When they pave it, there's a period of time where they have to go away and let the pavement cure before they put the color coat down on it. And the color code has been determined to match pretty much what was out there before, blue with white stripes. The boardwalk bathroom at 16th Avenue, as we all know, that's under construction. The contractor is in the piling phase. He's submitted all of his shop drawings. We have most of those reviewed and approved. We are in constant discussion with the contractor about getting the piles driven so that we can get off the beach by the middle of May, so that the building can continue construction. And we're hopeful, originally we had slated that it would be ready before 4th of July, but the weather has really caused a delay. We lost quite a bit of time with all the snow. And then we are having active discussions with the contractor about pile driving and his means and methods to accomplish the project. A project that the design is completed and we're in the bidding process. One is the pole barn at the Public Works Yard. That project has been bid once, and it exceeded the budgets based on the size and type of building, configuration of building. We're gonna plan on rebidding that project and look at ways that we can economize the cost. Then the other project that was recently bid was, we had a grant from the DOT for the resurfacing or repaving of the pavers in Piano Park. That grant was in the amount of $349,800. When we bid the project, it came in slightly over budget. I think it was $398, but the original award of $348 included all soft costs. So we're working with finance and we're looking at ways to reduce the cost. Not only was it paver reconstruction, but we were also creating an area for shade sales, seasonal shade sales that could be put up and taken down during the summer months.
I have a question, very basic. What was wrong with the current papers?
So the current pavers are they're in good shape, but with the addition of the piano, it pushed the center point of where the piano went away from where the center is now. And we also were talking about having an area where there would be pavers for engravement that people could sponsor a brick type of thing. So we looked at different options, and when we talked about funding for that, we applied to the DOT, and the DOT agreed to fund it in the amount of $349,000 and change. Could the pavers stay? I don't think there's any safety issue with the pavers, but with the DOT providing the $350,000, that's quite a bit of money that you could redo the paver cost.
So the center place of where we focus the piano place at the plaza now, if I understand, doesn't coincide with the piano? Is that, so we're doing this over so that it looks better?
It's aesthetics and providing for a new focal point for the plaza, because right now there was never a piano with a platform there before. So we're recentering, I'm sure you're here. There's a center point now where the holiday trees go and other things. That's a little off center from the piano.
That just seems like granted, it's not our money, it's DOT's money, but that just seems like a lot of money to solve that problem. And I don't, has anyone complained about the offset, or is this just a visual thing that's, I mean, I gather it looks bad from above, but.
So it's not just that, it's also the color of the pavers and the need to remove pavers to do engraving. So the overall project is not just pavers too. I think $100,000 of it was the shade sales, which would create a cooler, better place to congregate. So it's it's a culmination of an overall improvement, not just the pavers. We were also talking about lighting improvements, and, audio.
I'd love to see two tops out there, so people come, and we can get people to come to Plaza and have their lunch in the Plaza.
Mhm.
But, have we had a lot of uptick on the paper project, or are a lot of people signing up for that?
No, not since the original. We were gonna put it out though before, put it, offer it one more time.
But we did get bids, they were pretty competitive. I think the high bid, low bid was $398, the next bidder was like $425. So if we wanna scale down the project, if we wanna do less of the pavers, we certainly have that opportunity.
I mean, it makes sense to not go over what we're being given.
Right. So absolutely, I'll look for input from the mayor and council on how you wanna move forward. So those are the two projects that are designed and we're in bidding. Projects that are in the design phase. So when we were doing the fuel dock project, one of the things that was identified by not only Public Works and the folks at the marina, it was the folks at Bellingham Marine, they're the ones that manufacture the docks, that the fuel dock, when it was, whenever that choice was made for that fuel dock, it wasn't sturdy enough, is the best way to put it, to withstand the wave action that you get coming across the river, and that's why it started to rack and break, and Billy can attribute to the fact that they had to constantly tighten the tie rods of the dock to re-secure it, but ultimately, that's what made the fuel dock fail, was replaced with sand.
I don't believe so.
No?
I think it had some repairs to it, but I don't think it had.
Okay. So, in any event, the fuel dock was replaced, and at that time, we went with a stronger, sturdier, double tie rod system with two whalers. So it doubles up the strength of the T-dock. At the same time, we had a similar problem with the T-head at H-dock. So while the contractor was there, we had him rebuild that dock, and it's holding up, but it probably is not going to last the test of time. So we're currently in the process of doing a project to replace H-dock. It's similar to the fuel dock in as much as it has a large fetch of water, and when we get wave action, it's gonna break the dock. So that's, project has been funded, it's in design. However, this spring, Billy and I were talking about other priority projects, and Billy mentioned that there's an issue with the electric at C-dock. So that has not been funded yet, and that would be a project that would be in the planning phase for C-dock. Transportation Village Project, which is the next one on the list, is a pedestrian improvement project where the DOT provided funding to make pedestrian improvements essentially from the mid-block crossing that's now in front of the senior building, the Housing Authority building, and bring pedestrian improvements around to the train station. That project is in design. The DOT awarded $484,000 for that project. We're currently in discussions with DNR Russo about what their improvement requirements are, and trying to push as much of the construction obligation onto the contractor for DNR Russo. Hope they're not watching tonight. But that project, we're moving forward in the design phase, and we're actively discussing the improvements that are gonna be needed in that area to have safe pedestrian access. What we're talking about on 8th Avenue for this improvement, which was initially envisioned by the DOT and sent to the borough, is to choke down the width of 8th Avenue so that when you get to where the mid-block crossing is, pedestrians are only going to be crossing one lane. You have to evaluate that to make sure that that's going to function properly with traffic flow. So that's why we're in the design process still when we're talking about that project.
Jim, did I see that there is a 6-month delay on that one now too? Is that something that just came across?
Correct.
in the
So
resolution tonight?
yes.
Resolution tonight? Okay.
Very good question. So yes, we're actually recommending that the borough request an extension of time so that we have more time to evaluate and have a pre-application meeting with the DOT so that grant expiration's coming up, we wanna make sure that we don't lose the grant, but request a time extension. That's what we're having on the.
What's the plan if they don't do an extension?
That's a good question.
Don't leave it to chance.
That would be for like to award the grant, for the grant money to like last us another 6 months to figure it out, that's kind of like,
Correct, yes.
so, okay, so.
And since we're on a DOT highway, I think it's very likely that they'll give us that extension, and very likely we'll get an extension because we're working with a developer that also needed DOT improvements for their project, the DNR Russo project. So, but to answer your question, if they don't give us the extension, then we would be under the gun to get a project designed and awarded to a contractor.
Since
Since we're talking about 8th Avenue, is there anything that can be done where 8th and Main come together, coming off of 35? That's a mess there. People don't know where to go. It looks like it's wide enough for 3 lanes, but everybody's, it's a,
It's a drag race.
yeah, it's or demolition derby, one or the other, yeah.
So that's something that I know that that's been discussed quite a bit on what we can do to improve that. In the plan that we originally got from DOT, they had, in addition to throttling down the width of the mid-block, they were restriping, kind of shifting the center line enough so that you could create compliant lanes, which would be 1 through, 1 turn, or you know, there's debate as to how it should go, but.
I have strong thoughts on that.
Yes.
For the record.
I have a question. Choking down 8th Avenue, I know it'll be at the bottleneck, I know it would be at the, more in front of the housing authority. We just really have to focus and take into consideration DNR's main entrance is 8th Avenue, turning right on West Railroad, and then coming into the building there. So we're looking at, 200 cars a day coming down 8th or 10th Avenue and coming into the building. So that with the, again, I think I spoke about this a lot in the planning board. You talk about a railroad stop with cars need to kind of pile in, or we're backing up to 35. We already back up to the 35. So I think shrinking 8th Avenue in any way, I understand it's a pedestrian safety project, that could really affect traffic. And it's something to, look into us in your study.
No, I agree, and you're right. There's, that project at the planning board level had a lot of concerns were raised, and I think a lot of them were addressed. I mean, the main entrance is right off of 35.
No, it's not.
So there's that entrance.
No, it's not. That's a horseshoe.
It goes underneath the parking lot.
No, you can't, all you do is, all it is the delivery horseshoe. No, the main entrance.
If I remember right, it goes both directions. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I looked at the plans.
Yeah, the only entrance is if there's one on 10th. And they also cut off West Railroad Avenue, so you can't actually pass through anymore. So if you come in 8th Avenue, you can only turn into the building. And if you come up 10th Avenue, it's a 2-way, and you have to make it, if you're not going to the building, you have to turn around and go the other way. So there's no more through between 8th and 10th.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it's currently set up, though.
That you can't drive through West Railroad?
Correct. Yeah. So if you're coming off of 8th and heading towards 10th on West Railroad, there's signs that say 1 way, and the angled parking is that. So you're not supposed to go that way, but I'm sure people do it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So.
Right. Yeah, you're right. That is still cut off. Those are the 2 main entrances to the building in the back.
So one of the things that we've been working with the DNR Russo people is to create a sidewalk on the east side or the ocean side of it, so that pedestrians can walk to the train station. But the angled parking is in the way and actually goes into the New Jersey Transit right away. So we've been working with them to make that parallel parking as opposed to angled parking. And they need to relocate their power poles so that it would fall within islands. So it's a work in progress. But I think we're pretty close to identifying how that's going to lay out, but it directly impacts the pedestrian safety project, bringing people from the mid-block crossing over. So the plus side is we can save some money, construction dollars, but there's been a lot of time invested in trying to figure this out.
I would just add, when you're thinking about the pedestrian project on 8th, that you're about to have a restaurants and from where people are gonna be living toward the underpass to the marina and other places where they walk, so.
It's a very good thought, we'll have to
So,
evaluate that.
next to the senior building, there's a retaining wall that's falling. I don't know if that could be widened, but we should be looking at that as a path on the east side of the railroad to do that. We've used, railroad right-of-way everywhere all along there. I used to use it for recycling before my time, adjacent to the railroad tracks, west of here. So that might be something we can trade them, if they give us access to that for parking and sidewalks, so.
Well, good point, thank you.
I'm gonna piggyback off that one comment, because I did, actually, it was something I talked about with some of the businesses over on that area. With that amount of housing coming to that section, coming off of 8th Avenue, coming onto 8th Avenue, and not being able to make a left before the tracks, is pushing more to Main Street to get, now they're gonna go around to get to the 200 units that are between those two complexes. If West Railroad Ave could become a two-way street, that would actually be safer for, that could be part of the pedestrian project. Less coming down to 8th and possibly, hopefully some making a left before the tracks. That's, I think that's called West Railroad Ave, and then you have to cross the tracks at 7th and go down and make your left. It would possibly relieve some traffic, and then also, I mean, I think it would make it more safer pedestrian crossway coming across 8th.
Mike, I think the problem with that is the backup to
Maybe
35.
it's-
That's why they built
Just tell you.
Center Island.
No, there's a lot going on there, so.
So and that's a state highway there too, so if they were talking.
But I think your points are extremely valid, and I know the council is concerned with the impacts of developments that are on the horizon. So we should evaluate pedestrian ways to see what we can do to improve it, and take a look at traffic patterns to see if there's something that needs to change.
I think that a better traffic pattern is actually safer.
Right.
So, something to think about.
Okay, absolutely, thank you. The next project that is in design is, so while we're redoing we're doing the sewer lining project on 8th Avenue. And I just also like to remind everybody, I did find in the old archives that the sewer pipe from I guess from 35 down 8th Avenue to Main Street, just past Main Street, that was previously lined. There's actually two sewer lines, and you've got a local and an interceptor. The interceptor was lined just past Main Street, so we're picking up where they left off and completing that lining project. However, in 8th Street from Ocean to D, which is where the TASA $1.13 million project grant award is, we're in the process of doing a lead service line replacement project. Initially, we funded the project, and we thought that the entire water main needed to be replaced. However, we did a pipe sample, and identified that the pipe is in really good shape. It's ductile iron cement lined pipe, so it's relatively new. I did not find anything in the archives that would support that it was replaced, but it's clearly not 50 years old. It's a newer pipe. So there's no reason to replace the pipe, which leads me to my next question is, when that pipe was replaced, did they replace the service laterals or not? So we're gonna have to work with Public Works, dig a little harder and see what we can find in the archives before we move forward. Maybe we have to do a few test bits to see if some of these potential lead service lines have already been replaced. The Silver Lake Stormwater Infrastructure and Inventory Investigation, as I touched on that earlier, we're wrapping that up in terms of identifying the assessment of the lake, and we'll provide that to the Army Corps. NJDEP Green Acres Grant for the Jake's Law Inclusive Park Project at Cleary Park. That project is in design, and it did receive a grant in the amount of $525,000. I may not have touched on that in my initial grant summary, but it does have a grant associated with that, and it does have a 25% match. Planned projects, we have a community development block grant for door replacement at both the municipal building and also at Taylor Pavilion. So the county provided a Monmouth County Open Space Community Development Block Grant in the amount of $86,899 for the replacement of doors at those two locations. That's a planned project. I believe it's been funded, so it's something that can move forward this year.
Can we go back real quick to the Jake's Law, for the new park? That's gonna be adjacent to my grandkids call it the airplane park.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I just heard that there might be a problem with the soil there, because that historic fill was taken out of the river and put it there. Do we know if that's been?
Yes, that's been evaluated.
And it's okay?
That was one of the prerequisites, yes, it's fine.
Okay.
So that was one of the prerequisites from the folks at Green Acres, to evaluate if in fact it was, the area where it's going is historic fill, and it was determined that it's not.
Okay.
So that's not an issue for Green Acres, so.
And
that project-
are there any other, because of it, it's an inclusive playground, are there any other things that we're gonna have to include on that aren't included in the grant? Like any more bathrooms or anything like that?
No, we've checked with the grant funding administrators from Green Acres, and the park itself functions. So there's bathrooms there that are ADA compliant,
Okay.
and that's sufficient to meet the standards of the grant.
Jeff, what about access, like buses, parking, like there's terrible parking over there?
Pickleballers. I was coming over here, I saw, not to blame pickleballers, but there's.
Special needs kids potentially, like is there access to this potential park?
Pedestrian access, yes. Parking is another issue because of the configuration of the park. For us to add parking, that would, be another project.
Do we need to add parking?
I would have to look at it a little bit more closely and evaluate like the number of spaces. It's really gonna be how many people do you think walk or bike to the park? How many people ride their cars, or drive their cars? So that's something that can be evaluated. Adding this, I don't think is gonna create an additional issue. I think we already have the parking issue. Okay? So that is, lost my track.
You're on the ADA board.
88 doors. So the ADA door replacement is community development funded. IDOC is a dock that Public Works is interested in demoing and removing. Some of it's already falling down. It's been funded. How that project gets done, that needs to be discussed with Public Works. But given the cost of the project, it's going to require a public bid. So my recommendation would be to couple that with the HDOC replacement, because when the contractors come in to do that, they would take down IDOC. Within the fuel supply area in the parking lot, there's several fuel sumps that are outdated and need of repair. So that's something that's a planned project. 9th Avenue, in the 9th Avenue pier is how the fuel gets out to the fuel dock. That's something that we should plan on a future replacement for. It's not funded, but I'm just putting it on our list that we need to think about future planning for replacement of that fuel line. And I touched on earlier about the marina dredging. That's an issue in docks A, B, and C. I think have the most issue, but so we should plan for a dredging project. Couple that with the New Jersey Resiliency Project in the future. And when we did an evaluation of the marina, we did identify that the seawall, there's several parts of the seawall that should be planned for replacement. So when we're talking about future projects, we want to start planning for addressing some of the improvements in the marina. And again, I touched on the fact that we have a grant for Fifth Avenue from sea to ocean. So that needs to be budgeted and planned for. Same thing with 6th, which goes from 6th South Lake Shore and over to 7th. The 8th Avenue from Ocean to D has a grant. We touched on that. These are projects that need to be planned and move forward into the next phase. And then we also had identified 4th Avenue and 3rd Avenue. And you can see by the color of those roads, those are some of the roads that are in the most poor shape, which is why they were selected. However, there's nothing set in stone that those are the roads that you would do. but from an overall planning perspective, those are the roads that we suggest, but certainly if there's a higher priority somewhere in town, that can always be changed in the future.
I'm surprised, I guess you have bad condition on 13th Avenue over to L Street, but that's not mentioned anywhere in these future projects or potential grants. That strip of 13th Ave from 71 to L and then the entire stretch of L Street,
Yeah.
that's in really bad shape. You have it in yellow as bad condition, so
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with that, but I don't see anything on a project for that.
So what we had talked about, Councilman, was that we would do a I-Bank, New Jersey Infrastructure, NJDEP I-Bank project, which would include 13th Ave from West Railroad, I'm sorry, it would be water and sewer improvements from 13th Ave to L, like yours was saying, and also completing this loop. Given the number of lead service lines that need to be replaced in that area, it would be a good candidate. This whole area where I have highlighted here would be a good candidate to submit for an I-Bank application for a larger project. When you go with I-Bank, there's a lot of administrative costs. A lot of time goes into the bonding process. They require you to jump through several more hoops than if you just do the project yourself with regular bonding. So it pays the borough to do larger projects. And for an I-Bank project, we had talked about applying for lead service line replacement throughout the whole town, because there's principal forgiveness up to 50% for that. So that's something that the borough can consider as a future project. The projects, other projects that we had talked about for I-Bank, and then also consider rehabbing the elevated water tower as a part of an I-Bank project, because those are expensive to rehabilitate. You're probably looking at around $1 million plus, $1.2 million to rehabilitate the water tower paint. So they're big dollar projects that we have to plan for in the future.
The rehab of the elevator tower, we removed the paint from that, we moved it the last time. So I don't, it shouldn't be that much, I don't think.
Just paint it, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's great news.
Shot it, we spent the thing.
Um,
So you should check what we did. Also, our data is digitized, we got grants for that. I'm surprised you don't have access to all that.
So when we came to town, I've been constantly seeking information. So if you had, if you can tell me who has it, I'd love to have it.
I don't know who succeeded Bertzel Engineering. Bertzel Engineering had, was our engineer for close to 100 years. And all the towns got digitization grants to convert all their infrastructure to data. It's all layered, we spent a lot of time and effort on that so that we would always have this capacity. I was going to ask if this could be crowdsourced, because this is, I can't read the legends from here, but we paved about 85 to 90% of our roads in my 20 years, and that's not a brag. You have to do 5% of your roads every year to keep them in decent shape. This winter crushed our roads, the freeze cycle, the freeze frost cycle. So we have a lot of ground to make up, and that the more data we can get so you guys can identify what can be done now, the better. But I just see this really taking a long time to get to make a lot of progress. I get all the efforts you're trying to put into solving a lot of problems, but the roads are really bad.
And you're right. Well, I'm not saying that the roads are really bad. What I'm saying is that there's a need to continue to evaluate the roads. And this is a snapshot in time, right? And if you have a hard winter this year, some of these roads that are purple, maybe they're tan, because now they're even in worse condition than they were before.
I was going to say, it's a snapshot from 2023, right?
Right. So we did the road evaluation in '23. We actually came up with a multi-year plan of these are the roads that you can tackle in this order, but you can always move it around. But going back to your issue with data, I've worked with Billy to identify what information they have. I've reached out to the prior engineer. They've provided me what they said they have. I can go back to them again and see if they have something. If you have something specific you can point to me, that'd be great.
I mean, I can certainly try to track down the old birds of people to see where this all went
Well, unfortunately, I think when Birdsall had their demise,
Yeah.
I think a lot of their information was not transmitted to the borough. And, you know, I love Tom Rospos, he was a great guy, but if he didn't give that information to the borough, the product that you paid for, then that's a problem, right? Because that product should be here with the borough.
But the people that were there left to other, Tom, including Tom, but they all left to go to other places. And Tom continued to work on Silver Lake. I remember after Sandy, Tom was with another, I don't remember which engineering firm. That would have been the logical.
He was with Albert Marine.
All right, no, before that, he worked for, I thought he worked for another.
Mazer?
Engineering.
Mazer.
Yeah.
Mazer.
So Mazer would be where I would start. I think that was this logical, place that David would have gone. So like, let's start there and go from there. But we spent a lot of time and effort on it, and so I hate to waste any of that.
Agreed, but again, that would be the snapshot in time from when he did it in 2010. or 12,
Well,
whatever.
yes, but you'd see, we digitized everything that had been done, and so you would have those records to know what was where.
So one of the projects that we're working for the town, for the NJDEP stormwater compliance is to identify all the storm drainage in town. That's getting all digitized. If there's layers for water, we can obtain that information, water mains, sewer mains, we'll pull all that in. We use this, the best available information we had to identify the roads, the water mains, and the sewer mains. And that wasn't done by ourselves. We worked with Public Works, several meetings to go over what the snapshot should be in 2023. And as we complete projects, the snapshot should get updated to say that this road now, Fifth Avenue, from Main to C, is no longer purple, right? It's gonna be green. It's gonna be perfect. Let's hope, right? So.
What does the green color stand for? I'm sorry.
So what I'll do is I'll ask April to maybe put this
Good
map
or
up.
new? Yes, but what the green was.
So, I mean, Rhode Island Points, we did that in the early 90s. That was my first term.
Here?
Streets.
Yep.
There's nothing new about it now.
Yeah, it's hard to say, they're actually not green on the
Okay.
These are blue, some of them are blue, so, on the map. Yeah.
All right, I apologize.
They actually do look green up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're blue on
There
here.
is a digital version of this still online from when we did the transportation,
Yeah.
thing, what would that have been in October?
Yep, I think you're right.
Okay.
It prints out though as 8.5 by 11, so it's even hard on that. But all right, I'll try to get it properly.
We can put this up on the website, and then that way you can zoom in, zoom out, right? And then also when we're talking about I-Bank projects to address the I&I problem, I think one of the issues, or one of the areas we need to focus on, SMRSA did some projects with a sewer main along Route 35, but I think that's probably a focus for us to identify if we do have an I&I problem, because there are parts of 35 during storms that we get inundation, and, potentially being impacted by tidal water, so we wanna look at that. Ocean Avenue sewer improvements. So SMRSA reached out to me and basically explained that within Ocean Avenue, there's an old holding tank adjacent to a pump station, and there's a need to reconfigure how the sewer goes through that intersection. So we need to plan and budget for that as a future project. Memorial Field improvements, we've applied for a grant for softball improvements, but also some scoreboards and some other amenities. So that's a project that we need to plan for. We applied for $76,000. So we'll have to wait and see, but they typically will approve that. That's a project we need to plan for. I mentioned earlier that along the beachfront, that we got approval to keep the trailers and the water and sewer connections to the trailers at 19th, 8th, and 11th. Part of that agreement, though, is that we have to make the concrete pads a friable concrete pad, so that when the big storm comes, it would break up into smaller pieces. That's a permanent condition that we need to comply with. So at some point in the future, we have to do a project to replace those concrete pads. And again, whatever's gonna come of what's gonna happen around the lake between the walking trail and what improvements are gonna happen at the lake. So one of the things that recently, I was made aware of is that one of the congressmen has awarded, or will be awarding $1 million for flood mitigation and water quality improvements for Silver Lake. So again, that's gonna be a project that we need to plan for, but the plan will come from Army Corps, right? So Army
Correct.
Corps right now, working very closely with your environmental commission, who they've been doing a great job. You know, once they get the plan together, then the funding from the congressional award can be used for that.
Exactly.
There'll be a federal bid that Army Corps is running, or is it gonna be a public bid through Belmar? I'm just curious.
Yeah, to be determined. I mean, if it, the funding for construction is federal, would be, have to comply with federal requirements for procurement. So, but, you know, all that is to be determined as to what the outcome is. And when the project is identified, it'll be a public bid, have to comply with the federal requirements. So I talked about Silver Lake, and then I just put on here, there's a few projects that consultants are working on. So the Marina, LSRP, so over at your marina, there's an ongoing investigation, I should say testing, from some prior, potential issues. The borough had previously retained a company called VHB. That's an ongoing project, I think it's been funded, so that investigation can continue. And 1200 Main Street, that's an ongoing project that the consultants are looking at. And then miscellaneous projects, just keeping on the radar, on everybody's radar, that at some point in time, the DOT is gonna do this bridge replacement. So that's something that we need to make sure that we're monitoring. Main Street and 8th Avenue intersection improvements, Councilman, I think you were talking about that earlier, that we need to identify what can be done and how we're gonna do that with DOT's help. And then again, I mentioned that we're working on the DEP stormwater compliance. That's ongoing. There's requirements in 2026 and 2028 that the borough needs to meet, and we're working with your stormwater coordinator and with administration and finance to make sure that we stay in compliance. Your stormwater coordinator, Charlie, he's very good. He's on top of stuff. So, you know, we're working with him on a regular basis.
Did you freeze over the 1200 Main Street, the environmental project there? Any remediation?
I don't have an update on that. I'm really not directly involved with it, but I think you have a consultant on that.
So they're gonna do an update on that, I think, not next meeting, but the following.
Okay. I would imagine they're in the process of data collection and testing. We'll have more information for you in the near future, I hope.
Jim, you kind of glossed over the 16th Ave bathroom, so what exactly is happening up there?
So, on the 16th Avenue bathroom, they started driving piles. And they did, first they started with the 3 test piles, everything was good. They continued, there was some breaks due to weather. They continued driving piles, and a couple of piles, they hit, they couldn't drive to the depth that was required. The piles as specified are 45-foot piles, and with a 32-foot embedment. So they're supposed to, and a certain length of the pile is above the sand. So, round numbers, they have to drive, they're supposed to, by contract, by what they bid, drive to 32 feet. However, during this first phase of the project, they were requesting to shorten up the bottom of piles, which we worked with them on that in certain instances where the pile may need to go to 32 if they got their pile capacity. However, as they continued to move through the driving of piles, they had some more piles hit refusal, and so they wanted to look at other options. We identified this issue as a means and methods for the contractor. They wanted to look at other technical issues. We worked with them on that. We came up with alternate plans. They proceeded with the alternate plans. Then they brought in additional equipment, which is again their means and methods. That equipment broke. They left the job site, and we're now trying to get them back to the job site.
Now, what exactly are these pilings hitting, and how come
So, the pre-design and in the contractor specifications, there's a soil boring. The soil boring identifies what's below the surface. It's not concrete. It's either a silt or a clay layer. It says silty,
So
I
they
believe
knew
it
it
says
was there.
clay silt. What's that?
They knew it was there.
Yeah, it's right in the bid documents. However, they, their means and methods and how they want to, we don't direct the contractor. We don't direct their workforces. We provide them with the bid documents. They have to perform. That's where it's at.
So no one's working on it right
That's not true. We're working with the contractor to identify how to move forward. So no one's physically working right now, but behind the scenes, we're discussing how to move forward so that the project can get completed.
now. And is this gonna cost the borough a lot more money, or what are we expecting on the back end of this?
From my perspective, I don't think it should cost the borough any more money, but that's something that we need to work through. And since this is a public meeting and we're working on a contract, I would suggest that we not go into too much detail about the project.
I'm just asking.
So, but if we wanted to go in further detail about the contract, then that's something that maybe we want to consider discussing in closed session.
No, if there's not a good update for the next week or two, probably is a good option. But gonna need to happen. Have some meetings with the contractor directly. Okay.
I'll take direction from the borough. We're your representative. So however you guys want to handle it, how the mayor and council want to proceed, good with that. I only caution you about talking about contractual issues in a public format.
And have we sent time of the essence letters to them? I know that there's deadlines, there's grant, there's summer, there's the May date that we can't track piles anymore. I'm assuming we've sent some letters since he pulled off.
I have.
Okay, no, okay.
Yeah, we come, so we're
I know, it was
Remington already did your
legal.
representative, so we're,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Three of us have talked all that.
So they did receive a license letter indicating the urgency that we need to resolve this issue and they need to move forward with the project.
Excuse me. Hi, you had earlier mentioned about 14th Avenue. Would you just mind repeating that? You said from Ocean to B,
Ocean to date.
and then I also, I mean, from that here, it looks like 14th Avenue to Maine or something, and there's something else going on. Can you just?
So so this section would be a future project.
Oh, okay. And what's happening between B and Ocean on 14th?
That's gonna be, water main and water service lateral replacement and some sewer replacement. Then they're gonna do concrete improvements and pave.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you.
There's a lot going on. I think what maybe you can't see, and I apologize for that, is the grant funding received by the borough to date is $7.5 million. So that's quite a bit of money that the borough's been able to secure. And I think that the credit to this mayor and council, to your grant consultant, to administration, to focusing on projects where you can maximize your grant funding and minimize costs to the borough. Of course, the funding, for example, on these road projects, when we get a DOT grant, covers the road and concrete. It doesn't cover the sewer and the water. So we need to plan for those projects in advance so that when we do undertake, like Fifth Avenue, it's more than just the road, right? So that's part of the overall equation.
Another question. So, for instance, that area between Maine and E, I wanna say, on Fifth?
Main on Fifth?
Yes, or one block, the yellow one, it's bad in between right there.
Yeah.
It has only gotten worse since the winter. What is the best standard of practice for when we don't know when we're going to be, is the best practice to wait to repave that even though it's as bad as it is, if we don't know when we're doing underneath, or,
Yeah.
you know the question I'm asking?
I do, yeah. So sometimes there are like, so this whole area is gonna get paved with the project, but in certain instances where we have an area of road that's in really bad shape, but you don't have it planned do the water and the sewer and the drainage. There are instances where you can just do a top coat pave and just make it good for a little bit, right? And that's a decision that you have to make on a case-by-case basis. So if there are roads in town that have been hit really hard by this winter, and potholes are really just not gonna do it, then we can look at doing, like a quick overlay program in certain areas, just to shore it up until you can plan for the full project.
There's great
And the
eligible.
follow-up, and the follow-up for that, I know on E, between Maine and E, there was work this past week, right? If we have somebody coming in, this was it New Jersey Natural Gas who was in there?
Oh, Kylie, yeah, they're
Yes.
doing guesswork.
So if we have someone who's doing work on a street, if we have a utility, is there to work out something with them, or we're working in collaboration with them to, say, repave the whole top instead of the patchwork?
Right. So, yes,
Okay.
there is, and I've seen them barter before, where, they'll work with the borough on what they're required to do on one street and maybe push it to another street, particularly if you have a project that's, gonna be paving in the future. There's ways that we can work with them, but they're limited, and they're always gonna make sure that they stay within their original budget. They're not gonna donate paving just because
Of course not.
of that. So, if there are, I was surprised to see they were doing that gas work. I came to town the other day, and I
We were all
think I
surprised to see
yeah,
that they were doing that.
I said to Kevin or April, I said, who's doing that work? I was surprised. And it's in a location, where, it's very visible, right? I mean, everybody sees it. But
Just sent us like a notice on it, that was about it, right? Just a letter saying, we're doing that. Is that, yeah, pretty cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, a lot going on.
Yeah, there is.
Mr. Mayor, should I stay around in case there's any additional questions, or?
Yeah, if you could, yeah. You never know.
Be my pleasure.
Okay, we're still in the workshop. Any other items to discuss while we're here?
Ordinance 2026-05, that's about exceeding the budget of 2025. Obviously, Councilmember Rohan, we're not here for that, that's something we can still vote on, right?
What would be the issue with you voting on?
Just that we didn't develop that budget, I mean, we're voting on the 26 budget too, and there was no issue with that, I just want to make sure that was clear.
Is that
Yeah, there's no-
2605?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's the cap bank.
Yep.
Yeah, no, you're eligible for that.
That's a yearly ordinance that we pass, correct? I mean,
Lorraine, can you explain that again?
She explained it.
What is the cap? Would you mind explaining that again? The cap bank?
The cap bank, go.
Yes, I got that part.
For the new guys.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
I always need a
it's
refresher.
not crystal clear.
The state has limited municipalities' ability to deal with the budget process. One of the tools that they have left us is adopting an ordinance to increase the appropriations cap from 2% to 3.5%, and along with that, allow for cap banking, which is if you don't appropriate up to the cap maximum, then you can hold on to that, reserve it basically for the next 2 years and use it in subsequent budgets. If you don't adopt the ordinance, we don't have that latitude. So it's basically a pro forma tool that they have allowed us to maintain, but basically that's what it is. increasing the appropriations cap of 3.5%, and we're allowing for cap banking. Now, if you, within the budget document, you'll see that we have spent up to, we're under the appropriations cap by 61 cents, so it's not saving us. We're not reserving a whole lot here. It's a very tenuous process that we're going through with the state and the appropriations cap and the levy caps, and sometimes the two don't coincide. So this is really the reason for the for this ordinance, to allow us to increase to 3.5% on the appropriations and to cap bank if we had that option.
Okay. Any other discussion?
On the consent agenda, the payment of bills, I had a couple questions on the redevelopment attorney bills that I never received. I wasn't comfortable voting on that, but I don't want to hold a vote on the whole consent agenda, just because of something I think, regarding the payment of bills. And it's not all of the bills that I have a question on. Is it too late to pull that out, that vote?
No.
Or do we have to do the consent agenda all in one?
No, you can make a motion to
You can
remove
make
that.
a motion to take it out of the consent agenda.
Can I make a motion to pull out 2026-63?
Sure.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
You're aware that the actual payment and bill list is on the website?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna let you know that. Okay, anything else for the workshop? All right, if not, we're gonna move on to petitions. Petitions? April?
I did not receive any petitions.
Okay, approval of the minutes.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 10th meeting?
Motion.
Second.
Councilwoman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Councilman de Blasio?
Abstain?
Councilman Maroney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckafusco?
Yes. Reports of council. Councilwoman Donovan.
Thank you, Mayor. Save the date for a beach cleanup on May 2nd from the Environmental Commission. Another date to put on your calendar is April 26th. We'll be having Roots in Belmar at Taylor Pavilion with a speaker on native plants, information from community organizations on local resources and other groups. The patchwork yard recognition is ongoing. If you'd like to nominate someone, you can contact the Environmental Commission. This recognizes people who are using native plants and other green-friendly resources to maintain their yards. They are also doing an energy audit. This is the free energy audit, free to us, of the borough buildings in collaboration with DPW, so they asked me to make sure to thank them for their work with them. The Harbor Commission has just had their last monthly meeting. We are noted for the record that we have such improved communication between Belmar and DOT and New Jersey Transit, and are very optimistic going into the summer that improved communication will continue. We want to say thank you to DRCs and the library staff for an excellent soda bread competition. It's always fun. We have people there from Red Bank, from Towns River, and a very, very full house, so thank you very much. The Belmar Women's Club Scholarship is now open. Applicants can find the application on the belmar.com homepage under news and announcements, so there's a link to that. They have to be completed and submitted no later than Tuesday, May 12th. And finally, I hope everyone received the newsletter that went out yesterday. If you signed up, you should have gotten either via email or text. If you didn't receive it and want to, you can still sign up. You go to residents on the website, the menu option of residents, get Belmar alerts. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Kinney.
Thank you, Mayor. Arbor Day, Shade Tree Commission meeting, we had Arbor Day is scheduled for Friday, April 24th, with a rain date of April 27th. That's for all third graders in Belmar Elementary School and St. Rose Grammar School. More information to come on that. We have also retained arborist Bill Brash again to perform a townwide tree inventory, and that is with grant money plus a matching fund from the borough, in order to establish a master plan for all the trees in town, identify hazardous trees, where new trees can be planted, etc. So look out for that. Recreation signups for tennis lessons and for kids and adults are happening April 1st, as well as the running club. Summer basketball signups are happening now. Belmar Porch Fest is May 9th, so keep an eye out for Porch Fest. Bands all around town. There's going to be a schedule with bands, etc. So I'll keep you updated on that. And St. Rose, the production of Mary Poppins is this weekend, Thursday and Friday, 7 p.m. at St. Rose High School. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Councilman de Blasio.
The Harbor Commission, I think Councilwoman Donovan, you missed the bridge update. The bridge is open. If you didn't hear, and I think we call it the Giving Bridge. That's what we last tagged it. So yeah, so that was the Harbor Commission update. Planning Board, we had developed some further signage on awning ordinances. I had sat on the sign committee for the last 3 years on Planning Board, and I'm happy to say it has finally made it to council after we discussed that over and over again, and how to kind of normalize the signage in the town and develop a better ordinance for enforcement and also for new businesses, a little more understanding of what they can and can't do with their signage and lettering. Our next planning board meeting, nothing major on the agenda, is April 20th, and that is at 7 p.m.
Okay, Councilman Maroney.
One of the disadvantages of sitting down this end is you watch your ideas slowly get taken away, so I actually don't have a report.
And I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Let's not forget we have the St. Patrick's Day Parade on Saturday. And we'll be marching, and I'm looking for some volunteers, maybe small little volunteers who might want to carry the borough's banner. But we can play it by ear. I just got the notice today for the new guys. We meet down at the end of right by where Lake Como on Main Street. It's right there. That's pretty much it. And then we wait. And we wait. We wait. But hopefully we'll see many people there on Saturday.
You don't want to land and blow bubbles in your face again? Because
No,
I can make that happen for you.
I'm looking this year, so, we'll see how I do. Okay, let's move on to the public session.
If anyone has a comment or question about a resolution on the agenda, please step forward and state your name and address.
Okay, I'm looking through the crowd and I don't see anyone, so I guess we can make a motion to close the public session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is, can I have a motion to approve resolution 2026-63, authorizing payment of bills?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion before we take that vote? If not?
All right. Councilwoman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Councilman de Blasio?
No.
Councilman Maroney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckfusco?
Yes.
Next, can I have a motion to approve the resolutions as listed on the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, Councilwoman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Councilman de Blasio?
Yes.
Councilman Maroney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckfusco?
Yes.
Next, we have ordinance 2026-5. This is an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. This is open for public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on the ordinance, please step forward. Seeing none, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And can I have a motion to adopt ordinance 2026-5?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, Councilwoman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Councilman De Blasio?
Yes.
Councilman Maroney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckafusco?
Yes.
Next we have ordinance 2026-6. This is an ordinance amending and supplementing chapter 40 development regulations, amending section 7.24 signs. Can I have a motion to offer for first reading and introduction?
Motion?
I'll move second.
Councilwoman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Councilman De Blasio?
Yes.
Councilman Maroney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckafusco?
Yes.
Right, now we're on to the regular public session. If anyone would like to speak, please remember to state your name and address first.
Once again, I don't see
All
anyone
right.
rushing to the microphone, so.
Can I have a motion to close the public session?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, next we have our last item, which is resolution 2026-72. Resolution of the council permitting the council to adjourn into executive session where it has been determined by the Borough Council that it is necessary to discuss the following matter at its regular meeting in the absence of the public, which is pending litigation, contract negotiation, and confidentiality with the governing body. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act permits the Borough Council to exclude the public from that portion of a public meeting during which such matters are discussed. Now therefore be it resolved by the Borough Council as follows: the council shall recess into a private executive session from which the public shall be excluded to discuss the above referenced matters, that the scope of the executive session shall be limited to the above matters as stated, that those matters discussed in executive session shall remain confidential until such time as the need for confidentiality no longer exists as determined by the borough attorney, and that minutes of the closed session shall be taken and kept free from public review until such time that the need for confidentiality no longer exists, and that the regular meeting of the council shall resume after the executive session, at which time the borough council may take action in reference to the topic discussed. Do we have a motion to adopt this resolution?
Motion.
Second.
Councilwoman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Councilman De Blasio?
Yes.
Councilman Maroney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckafusco?
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a good evening.
That was my only point.
so like.
Okay, the microphone's on. Don't say anything.
All right, motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, good night, everyone.